Pilgrims, and welcome to another episode of the Polygon Pilgrimage. And today I wanted to show you around our game scene here. We got some feedback from our users at the latest convention that we showed the game off at. And I wanted to take some time to show you guys sort of some little tips and tricks on how to optimize things. So just kind of bounce around the scene here a little bit and show you what we've been working on and how we've been making improvements. So here you can see this is our hallway, and I have my checker pattern on the floor here. Been working on that. And the walls here, you can see I've worked really hard to line everything up to make sure that our repeating pattern here on the floor, travels around corners well. And then all of our pieces have this sort of seamless nature to it. And there's a couple of tricks to that. One is, of course, just kind of eyeballing it, make sure that things make sense. But another thing is I've been using this grid, as you can see here with my UVs. So I'm going to bring up the material editor. I'm just going to show you really quickly. If I go down one and bring in this material here, this is my UVs, or my UV checker. So it's a little bit different than just the black and white checker that you use all the time. The A and ones and alternating colors and patterns help me kind of figure out if there's any distortion. And because they are squares, and when they alternate like the normal checker pattern, I can count very easily. So these walls are 10 feet tall. So if I count, there are exactly 10 boxes. And that tells me that across here, there are 6 for this wall piece. 6, see? Across the top here. So this helps me to really kind of plan out my pieces. And as you can see here, if I do this for the corner pieces, you can see it continues seamlessly. They all continue. And I used all this to line everything up so that I know that when I apply my final texture here, that everything looks nice. So that's what we've been doing here on the floor. So if I pull back a little bit, let's look at the floor. So the floor is in the same way. Now obviously the floor is too big to be one continuous object and to have that seamless texture applied. So we've broken it up into pieces, and you can see here, here's a good example. This is one big piece here. It's actually been split into 2 in the UVs. So if I open it up in UVs, we'll take a look at that. Let's bring it over here. You can see here that this will end up being 2 different pieces because they do unfortunately overlap a little bit. They're too big. But that's okay. I don't mind having 2 different pieces for that if it means that my floor texture overall looks much better because now everything is exactly the same size. And I don't mean the exact same size as in they're all exactly 10 feet. What I'm saying is the same size as in the scale. So you can see here this object here, this is a tape measure object, and what I've done is I bring this from corner to corner, and that tells me the overall length of the object. Now breaking that down into 12 inches for feet, translate for your measurements here. I've done the exact same process here. Scale these so that these UVs are 1 foot to 1 foot in here, as are these here, and so far and so forth. So that means that my hallways here should be, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 feet wide. And that's what they've been moved to. They were 6 feet wide, and we moved them to 8 feet wide. So now everything is physically accurate to one another. So everything around the space all flows together with textures because everything is, 1-to-1 to the real world scale. Nothing is out of proportion. That's the easiest way to spot a mistake, is when it looks out of proportion. Now you might be thinking, okay, well, all of that makes sense and the walls make sense, but what's going on here? This is clearly too big. And you're right, it is. It's exactly twice too big. Pardon the pun there. So what we have here is I bring over the UVs, we'll take a look. You'll see here the split down the middle and the separate piece here. That is for both the floor and the ceiling of an individual apartment. So every apartment is going to have its own texture for the floor and ceiling because there's different levels of decay, destruction, different things going on. However, if I were to take these and scale them up by exactly ×2 their current size, they're much bigger than my available area, and that breaks my 1-to-1 scaling with the real world. So how do we solve it? Why are these so big? Well, a keen eye will notice that these are they are exactly twice as big as these. So what I've done here, these UVs were set at 1-to-1, and they originally went well past this space. And what I did was, using the grid here, I brought them down to half their regular size. So now I've moved these shells around just because I can, because there's not much else that can go on this sheet. I might move them into a corner, something like this, and put some other things on the sheet since they're going to have to share anyway. But this sheet is going to have to be a ×2 sheet. So what that tells me is, in my texturing program, when I apply textures to this scene, I have to go into the scaling and hit ×2. Tell myself this has been scaled on purpose to maintain that 1-to-1 ratio. So if I scale it by 2 and the UVs have been kind of shrunken by 2, if you think it that way, then it equals out to 1, which means it's still 1-to-1 world accurate. So again, I can take these, I move them over here, and I can put some more things on here, but all of those things would have to be that half scaled that we have going on here. So that's one thing there. That's another trick. If you have a large object and it has to be 1-to-1, that's another trick you can do there. Now, as we move things around, one of the things that I did was I went through and kind of reassessed our assets here. That was a poor choice of words. We looked at the assets again and said, you know what? How can we make improvements for the future? One of the things that a game engine does is something called a call, and it reaches out and says, here's a model, what is your texture, let me apply it. And in the original model that we had here, our corner pieces, if I find one down here maybe, yes, our corner pieces are multiple pieces. So I have an interior piece here, you see that's just that guy, and then I have this exterior wall, and I have this wall, and I have the wall across from it. Well, what we've done over here is we've sort of combined all of those assets. So let me move around a little bit, here we go. So now the interior and exterior walls of an apartment from the hallway into the apartment is one object. It's one object because it shares a UV sheet and it shares a texture. So now instead of 2 models calling for their texture, it's 1 model calling for the same texture. So I've made those kind of changes where possible. Certain things like this, an interior bend corner like this is not possible, but he's still over here for reference. Here's a wall on either side of one itself. That guy is sharing. And the doorways as well. The doorways were actually said to be too tight for the player to get through, so we made them a little bit bigger. And as such, we also made sure that they share a UV sheet. So if I look at one of these wall sections, let's look at the simplest one here. I'll show you the UVs for this guy. Pretty simple. So I turn off the sheet here, you notice they're just right on top of each other. So this gets into another process we'll talk about later called atlasing, where I've actually figured out already where all the textures are going to go. Let me see if I can pull it up here. I figured out where all the textures are going to go, and then I build to the texture, so to speak. We've already planned out that there's going to be walls up into this point, interior walls up into this point, and then from here over to here is nothing but trim, and then trim down here on the bottom. So let's turn that on, and you see here, here's the hallway, the exterior walls, and the interior walls, and then here was where the trim goes. Or for a second set, we had destruction here. So if I zoom in, you can look around and see I got some variation on the wall here, so I can actually take this panel and slide it over. But I have to slide it over in certain measurements, so that they still have to line up with these assets here so they can continue to repeat properly. All right, so that's what we did there. So made some changes there. And as we were going through and making improvements to the whole process, one of the things that came up was we wanted to have some trim. So I've been making this trim object, which is a custom object. It's what you would call a hero piece, but it's kind of low res. But this will go all the way through the whole apartment. So we'll go all the way down and loop around this other side and come back. So this guy here, he's nothing special at the moment. It's basically just a box, without a top that goes around. And now the without a top part is because the way our camera works in game, you're able to pan back quite a bit. And so everything below a certain line does not get shown, and anything when the camera dips below that line, then it gets shown. But this top part for here will have a solid blackout object, so we won't need that. But the trim here, you'll notice that I've deliberately put some cuts into it. This could be one continuous just kind of bang, bang, bang to every corner, but it's not going to work like that. So if I come over here, you'll notice I've got some vertices and things over here, so why bother to keep cutting it like this? Well, if you look carefully, for my one-to-oneness, it's following right along with the walls. And the reason for this is they have to maintain their one-to-one as well. So I have to put some cuts here. So here I did a double, and then I can put one here, kind of mix it up a bit, but can't go much further than that. So over here, there's going to have to be a cut here and a cut here. Now this does add a little bit to the poly count. However, this is such a small object, such a small poly count. I mean, we might add one more edge along here, kind of round that off a little bit, but it stops at doors. It can get covered up by the door frame, that sort of thing. So it's definitely worth a few extra polygons here. Not a big deal if we can call one texture for this whole thing and we know that it's one-to-one ready. So that's a perfect example of doing that. And then as we made changes and also things, we had to invent some pieces. So games do this all the time. One of my new favorite games is doing this. They do the same kind of thing. And so we had to extend this hallway. The player said it's too tight and narrow, make it bigger. So this got wider, this got wider, this got wider, And this had to get wider too. Well, in order for that to get wider, we had a gap now suddenly where I can say, okay, I do have a piece over here that is this little 3-foot section we could put in there. No problem. But I said, you know what? One of the things we also are adding is this kind of freestanding console, almost like an ATM. So I said, you know what? If we're going to put that here, why don't we build this little wall element? It's going to be like a support, and we can have some wires coming down from it. We can put a light on it. Those wires can wire up to the console, kind of like the power source for an ATM. So we can build it all into the design, and it helps us mask our seam there. And I said, you know what? Let's put another one over here right next to the elevator, because the elevator would need probably a power box, so we can tie it in there. And then while I was at it, I said, you know what? I was looking at my job actually at work, and I said, it looks like every time there's one of these exterior corners, there's this little support kind of, not even a support, it's like a trim cover that goes around the edge so that the edges of the corners of the walls don't get all banged up. So I added that in as well, and that's just like 4 polygons. It's nothing crazy. Just enough to kind of cap off the corner. Will help you hide some seam ending if you wanted to like make the pattern repeat differently on this side. I could flip it and you wouldn't really notice because it ends right there at the corner. It happens to work out fine anyway because this piece does it for us, but it's a great little piece, adds a little bit of visual breakup to the environment, and I can just throw a couple of them in there and they look great. And then one more thing down here, at the intersection between some of these, I started playing with the idea of putting these in here. Now I want to put these in here for design, but I have to respect the original concept of widening the hallway was we need more space for the player to move around. So I have to see, I have to make sure I can remove their collision, or we can make sure that they're very, very low profile, meaning they don't stick out too far from the wall. So that's going to be something we're going to have to look at. But overall, I just want to give you guys a quick little look at some of the changes and improvements we're making, how to optimize your assets to make sure that you're making the best use of your texture space, that you're doing one-to-one with the real world as much as you can to make sure that it's all physically accurate. If that's what you're going for. If you're going for some totally alien and wacky and cartoony, you might have different criteria. But to do this kind of a look, this is what we're going for. And of course, this is very early, very rudimentary, but you know, it all adds and it all blends, and in the end, we have a great product. So keep practicing, guys. Keep getting better. Try new things. If you have questions about this or about the UV scaling or anything I went over, feel free to ask. And as always, as I said, keep practicing, keep getting better, and I'll see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.